Okay. My name is Joseph Brady Kirkish, and I was born and raised here May 23rd, 1925. My mother tells me that they had the blizzard of the year, snow on the ground. My father was afraid to drive. They called a cab. And in those days, the cars were not very heavyweight, and they were spinning on the bridge, the old bridge. And they're afraid I might have been born right there on the bridge. I wish they had, because again, it would be fun. Every time I wrote out, place of birth, I could say Portage Lake Bridge or Portage Lake, But it didn't work. We got to the Hancock Hospital, so I was born there. But that really is the whole story behind it. I grew up in West Houghton, which was the cheaper side of town, as you probably know. East Houghton was the ritzy side. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, like all women in those days. I was the oldest of 4 kids. I came first, about a year after they were married, and then came 2 years later, 2 sisters, and then 6 years after that, my brother, and that was the end of it, in a sense, for the family. And it was not easy being the oldest child. I grew up under their tutelage very, very strongly. As I told you, my father, coming from Lebanon, drilled into us the idea that we were on earth for other people first, that we always came last. And he said, you'll be happier that way, and it's true. Had an allowance, not much, and for me, starting when I was 10 years old, I was already working after school at the grocery store, packing produce and waiting on the customers and such. And until you had to sell was your personality. And I watched him doing it, and I learned from him too. And I discovered by doing that I could sight people out the moment they walked through the door. Really. And ever since then, that helped me in teaching. It helped me in getting to know people. I've become a people person. I had a fantastic imagination, always. And we didn't have something that we could work with our hands the way you do. So we would hide behind rocks and shoot our Buck Rogers guns at the enemy on the other side. And we could live like that for hours. I had boyfriends that I could go with, and we'd go off on our bikes and find a nice area that looked mysterious. And then we'd play Buck Rogers. That was our science fiction-y thing. And it was as real as little girls are with dolls. We really believed what we were doing all that time. It's great fun. And we could spend a lot of time doing that. I read constantly. The old Carnegie Library here was my second home. And I found a little area for the kids. And I'd sit there and I could spend the whole day in there. And the phone would ring at the desk and the woman would say, yes, he is. And then she'd say, Joe, time for lunch, whatever it is. Because they knew where I was going to be at that time. That was my world. Again, I was a dreamer. When I was getting old enough to be able to read adult books, I always picked the fattest ones out. Gone with the Wind, Les Miserables, any book that was at least 700 pages, I would take out and read overnight. To me, it was another world that was worth living in. And I think that's why I became eventually a teacher in humanities. I loved chemistry. Not scientifically. I just like the idea of making fireworks or stink bombs or things like that. And it got to the point where I had my own room at home, and it got to smell so bad that it was permeating the house. And my father put his foot down one day, and that was the end of it. I almost blew the room up one time. I made something that would be akin to nitroglycerin, but not as strong. And I guess he decided that was it. So it spoiled my life. But those things all were apart from simply living with people. I never had much chance to have friends as such because I was working at the store until dinner time, go home, we'd eat. I had to do my homework. But around the area, I had a few good friends. Well, I saw friends going off to war, older friends, relatives, so I heard about what happened to them when they did. World War II was horrible. When I graduated from high school, I was now 18. The war was over, but I was drafted. Never made sense to me, whatever. It was completely over, but they were still drafting people. And so the thing I told the people I was talking to when they were interviewing for knowing where to put us was that whether we're in fighting or not now, if we ever got into a fight anywhere and I had a rifle in my hands, you might as well know I'll never shoot. And they took my word for it. They checked my eyes and realized that I had that eye problem. So I was put into a special service and mainly assigned to office space. And I did that wherever I went. Ruined everything. I was a real fumblebum. And every office I went into, I think I must have ruined it one way or another. Finally, we got to San Francisco, and I was ready to be sent overseas, 12 of us in a plane. That would have been great. There's an old rule that the less the people being sent somewhere, the more choice, whatever that position is going to be, instead of a troop train with 2,000 people. And I thought, wow, the Philippines, this is exciting. So they put me in the position there of making out the salaries for everybody who was permanent cadre there in Hamilton Field. And I said, that's not what I studied. I said, you're trying to get me to do something that's completely different from what I had really learned. And the lieutenant said, you got that MOS? You do it. And I said, yes, sir. So I sat down there. I knew all the initials you used. I knew all of the symbolic stuff. And I faked it. I knew that if somebody was in a special area, they got paid on a certain day for it when they left and get. But I didn't know what the special days were, so I made them up. And I did that all the way through that month. The lieutenant would come over and look over my shoulder and say, good work, Kirkish, and he'd go on. Well, it looked fine, but I knew I wrecked everybody there that I was writing them out for. I had to. I mean, that was an order. So I was finally let out. So after it was all over, I said, I just want to do one more thing. I wanted to go back to the barracks where I was doing all that work and say goodbye to all these friends I had up there. Started walking toward it. One of them saw me through the window, came running out and said, stop, don't go back in. He said, everybody's back in here complaining about the money that they didn't get or the money and the things that went wrong. He said, we're backed up by a whole month now. And he said, if you walk in, you'll probably get shot on sight. I put on a magic show. I sometimes was an MC for the shows. It was a lot of fun. Got me into town, wherever we were, and I could meet other people that way too. It was fun. So I said to the woman that was in charge of the USO there, I'll do one last show before I leave. So I had my uniform on and the brightest tie I bought out in town that I could get, you know, really gaudy. And I came up on the stage and said, hey fellas, look, I'm a civilian now. After I got back from service, we were all given a certain number of years that we could get free education. I'd never been to higher education before. I didn't even know what a degree was. So I went to Central then. Central had everything I'd like to have. I'd written a play at Big Rapids that won a national contest. And as I said, I knew nothing about theater before then, but a wonderful couple, a Jewish couple who had fled Germany, were over here. And they kind of took me under their wing. And they decided I had enough talent, so they got me a scholarship to summer stock out in Massachusetts. It was a huge awakening for me, really huge, to be in a professional theater setup. I was good at directing, I found out. And so came back with that knowledge. So it said, when I got to Central, I wrote a musical there, had it produced, it was for charity, and they did it every year. And I found out later that they had more money from that 2 week that we did it in than any other that had ever been done. And I knew it was going to be good. Had a great backing with the students thing because we weren't sure that it was going to go well. So we got a rumor going that after the first night it was being shown, it was going to close down because of censorship. Well, there was not much in it we had to worry about, but that was what we started. And because of that, we packed 1,400 people into the theater. Well, I got my master's there at Central, and I didn't know what to do with it. I minored in psychology and writing skills. I majored in speech because I was going to come back to tech eventually and teach up here. My parents were not well. They had to go away for the winters. I had my kid brothers still at home going to high school. So the natural thing would be to start at tech. They needed somebody there, and at first I was teaching. We all taught freshman English. That was mainly our idea. I taught the speech courses, and that was about it. So I began to work my way into my love, photography, and I was able to get in one course first and then a second course, advanced course, secondly, at our darkroom. That was great. But then I wanted to get into film. After 2 years, he finally said, we'll teach a course in the evening, see what it goes like. And he came to a few of the times. Of course, being a film course, the place was packed in no time because everybody thought they'd get an easy way out, and it wasn't. They had to write a paper a week for me based on the film I showed every week, and they had to grow with me, starting with the silent films, and every year, another 10 years, on one topic. It might be war, might be generation gap, could be anything, because all films, you know, that have been written in every topic you can imagine. And so they had to really learn the language. They had to see why a film is good, why it was bad. They had to realize that the plot is the least important part of a film. Unfortunately, that's why everybody goes to one, but it's wrong. And then come out of there, to some degree, educated in the Journal of Filmmaking. A couple of things. First of all, don't put all your emphasis into the technical areas, digital or whatever, unless you plan to go into it as a future. But if you're just tinkering with stuff, don't make that your whole lifetime. There are good things about it and the bad, and I think the bad outdo the good. They keep you from doing too many other things, and the two that you ought to start building are your curiosity, your sense of curiosity in what makes things work, what makes them not, what makes people work, what makes them not, and imagination. So curiosity and imagination are really valuable, and I'm convinced of that absolutely. It's what we lack very much in our times,